Hello everyone and welcome back to another Wizard101 video. Today, I'm going to be doing another, it's not even a guide video. Basically, I'm going to be giving you guys tips on how to make questing go faster, because there's definitely a few tips that not many people, it's not that not many people know, it's more that they don't really think about while questing, and it just dramatically lengthens the time that it takes to actually get through the game. Now, the reason why I'm giving you guys these tips is because I know that a lot of my audience, not a lot of it, but a substantial portion, does PvP, and they like power questing up their characters as fast as possible. So I'm giving you some tips to do that, that I've learned. So let's get right into it. First tip, I've given this tip before, but people still don't know it, is that if you get dragged into a battle, say, oops, I got dragged in a battle with a lost soul, you can escape quit, right? Press play, and immediately press the S key and back out of the battle. That way, you don't have to flee and walk back, get mana, stuff like that. It can be very useful if you get dragged, which will happen probably at least once while you're questing through the game at some point. But I find it happens definitely frequently enough to the point where that is a good tip to know. So that is tip number one. The second is going to be to leave marks. Now, this seems obvious, but I find that a lot of people don't make use of marks as well as they could. So, for example, one of the first quests in this game, Sarah Night Chant, tells you to walk all the way to Lady Oriel. At some point, you are... Okay, actually, let me give another example. So, Sarah Night Chant tells you to go beat Skeletal Pirates, which are all the way over here. If you leave a mark here and then walk to the Skeletal Pirates, you don't need to spend the time walking back. You can just press the go back to button, and it works much, much better. It's very, very useful to have the mark location button, because a lot of times it can speed up the process dramatically in regard to questing and walking around. So while I'm walking to the next one, I'm going to tell you my next tip. The next tip is that you don't need to go for every gear set. And now, this might seem obvious in retrospect, but a lot of people, I feel like, still don't follow this. For example, a lot of people think it's required to farm Mount Olympus. You don't need to. Realistically, you can run on Bazaar gear all the way up to Waterworks gear. It's not necessary to actually farm Zeus. The only thing that's really necessary is the Skyr and Hasta for the extra 10 damage. Everything else is not necessarily necessary. Barkingham Palace, I've said that people don't farm it in the past. One of the reasons for that is that people are so fixated on the Zeus gear that they don't want to farm again. They think it's a waste of time. Personally, I think that if I was to choose whether I farm for the Zeus gear or I farm for Barkingham Palace gear, I'd farm for Barkingham Palace gear. But that's besides the point. You don't need to farm for every gear set. The gear sets you do need to farm for are Darkmoor and Dragoon gear. Those are the two necessities. And you may be asking, what about Waterworks gear? If you want to, you can use Wintertusk Crafted. It's almost identical. And I'm not kidding. Like, I've done out the stats before. I've done a video on this. I don't think a lot of people watched it, but I did a video on it. The stats are like 3 damage difference, like 20 crit difference. It's not that big of a deal. If you want to go for Wintertusk Crafted, you can. So next tip that I was walking to is teleporters. Please make use of the teleporters. If you have a quest, say you're here, right, and Parrot Zarthanax, whatever his name is, says go to Petrov Gloomstrider and destroy him. Instead of walking there, please go use the teleporter that says go to Petrov's Tower and walk to Petrov's Tower. It saves so much time to do that, and honestly is one of the best tips in this game, is use teleporters, because teleporters are in every world besides Krokotopia at this point. Also, Wisteria doesn't have any, I don't think. Which means you can make use of these teleporters. It's incredibly important because it saves so much time. So, really, that's all I wanted to go over was those tips. Like, sometimes I notice... Wait, need to sneeze. Haven't had the sneeze in a while in one of my videos, but there we go. One thing I noticed is, like, Formal Phantom if you watched the live stream where I quested with him his myth, is you might have noticed a few times is that he was like, how did you get there so fast? It's just because I make use of these teleporters and the go-to buttons so much more than most people do. It's just a habit that I've ingrained into myself over time. So for example, like when I beat a boss and it says, you know, it says like do this or whatever, I use the go-to basilica button. It's much easier to do that. I leave marks quite frequently. It seems like I'm blitzing through the game, and it's just because I have all these marks and stuff that make it so it's easy for me to go back. Okay, one final hint that I thought of while doing this is one that I found to be incredibly useful, especially in worlds like Mirage. It was incredibly useful. And that is, if you're in a long dungeon and you finish the dungeon and it tells you to walk out of it, please do not walk all the way to the beginning. If you have a mark, you can teleport out, but the best thing is that you can escape quit and press play again, and you'll be back at the beginning. I can't really think of a dungeon that this directly applies to. So like, for example, maybe Labyrinth, right? After you're done with the Labyrinth and it says go back to Cyrus Drake or whatever, or go back to Crystal Guide, if you escape, quit, and play again, instead of having to walk all the way back, you're right back at the beginning of the Labyrinth sigil, and it's incredibly useful. You can see here, this is a boss fight, so it's a bit different, but you can do it. Incredibly useful. I found this super useful in Mirage, because Mirage had a lot of dungeons where no mount was allowed, so you had to walk all the way from the beginning to the end, and once you get to the end and finished, it says go back to this character, which is in the beginning. You could just go back to the caravan and move, but it's incredibly less effective than escape, quitting, and playing again. Excuse me. So keep these in mind. These hints are honestly very helpful in speeding up questing. They all just streamline it in a way that makes it much more effective. I can't really give you any other hints besides maybe power questing yourself if you have another character, but that's a completely different story. That's not how to make it faster. That's how to power quest, which is just a different topic that I've done in the past. I could do another topic, or I could do another video on power questing at some point in the future, but it depends on you guys' reaction. So let me know if you found any of these useful. Let me know if you learned something from this video, because I know that not everyone knows some of these tips, so it could be helpful. Let me know if you found it helpful. If you enjoyed, drop a like at the sub button. Maybe even drop a channel membership if you're feeling generous. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you all for watching.